Eskom's board is due before Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts today. This follows yesterday's sitting with Police Minister Bheki Cele, the National Police Chief, Hawks Head and Special Investigating Units boss. SCOPA is monitoring measures to combat corruption at the power utility, and it's particularly focused on what action Eskom and authorities have taken following allegations raised by former Eskom CEO Ruyter. Let's take you live to our reporter Erin. She joins us from outside Parliament for an update on what happened yesterday, Erin, and what we can expect today. So let's start with yesterday's sitting. What did we learn about law enforcement's approach to dealing with these allegations at Eskom?
Morning, Michelle. So what's key to come out of yesterday's meeting is that neither the police commissioner nor the police chief, the head of the Hawks or the head of the SIU has any knowledge of a senior politician being investigated over alleged involvement in a cartel or a syndicate, sometimes violent, goes the allegations, involved in fleecing Eskom. And also critical to note that the response from law enforcement around dealing with corruption at Eskom, dealing with organized criminal networks which are stealing coal, copper cables, transformers and other critical infrastructure from the power utility is an ongoing project. We had Police Chief Fani Musamela, for example, saying that there hasn't been a lull, there hasn't been inaction following the allegations of Ruyter, but he and his colleagues speaking before SCOPA yesterday were at pains to say that the response here is part of a broader ongoing police response to Eskom graft, which precedes Ruyter's flagrant allegations and forms part of a bigger NAP joints project, which is a multidisciplinary effort called Operation Simba. And that involves various stakeholders in government, including intelligence, engagements with cabinet members and so forth.
Quite a frustrating day. One got the sense that MPs and the SCOPA chair as well were incredibly frustrated with responses that they were getting. In what way did they sort of press the people who were there, insofar as the Hawks, the SIU and the police, on their responses in particular to cartels and syndicates? Did they get a response on that?
They did, Michelle, and you're right. There was the sense of a kind of general and almost lackadaisical presentation from the top brass in law enforcement. Police Minister Bheki Cele had other engagements. He did have his deputy minister there at the start of the meeting, arrived when he could and apologized, and then undertook to say that he has personal and political will to get to the bottom of corruption at Eskom. He actually relayed some of his own experiences of visiting an Eskom plant in Mpumalanga and some of the challenges he saw manifest during that visit, also his engagements with President Cyril Ramaphosa at the beginning of this year over Eskom, sort of underlining the president's cognizance of the power crunch at the national utility. And I think many of us are experiencing this seemingly increasingly on a daily basis. You know, it's sort of wearing away at people's daily lives and patience, really. But in terms of dealing specifically with cartels and those allegations from Ruyter, there was frustration. The chair himself of SCOPA, Michelle, actually saying at some point, that's really why we're here, to get police's response to what Ruyter raised, particularly around that political player he hasn't named. He has said he provided that information to Public Enterprises Minister Praveen Gordhan and others, and so really honing in on that. And it was an ANC MP and also a DA MP who really underlined the point around getting answers on cartels and corruptions. We had some response on that, Michelle. There was feedback from the police on that score, you know, them saying what work they've done and what action they've taken. We heard about 1,660 Eskom-related cases reported to the police between April of last year and March of this year. And 1,263 of those, so the vast majority, are still under investigation. Here's where this might get interesting for today, Michelle, with Eskom's board set to appear before SCOPA. 150 of those 1,660 cases were reported to the police by Eskom itself. And so those are coming from within the national utility, detecting alleged criminality from its own ranks. And then we had from Fani Musamela, the police chief, evidence or presentation, Michelle, on work on the ground to kind of beef up the argument the police haven't sat idle and they are doing things, particularly around Mpumalanga and coal syndicates there. We heard about visits, and this is now nationally speaking, to 154 coal yards, 388 visits to power stations, 1,470 visits to substations. The numbers go on and on. But I think, if you're a disgruntled citizen who's dealing with load shedding on a daily basis, the idea that police are going to illegal coal yards and handing out a few fines here and there might be cold comfort, especially if you can't turn on a heater or boil a pot of water for some tea. But we're going to hear from Eskom's board today on what measures it's taking to deal with corruption, and it's likely to get a very hearty grilling from SCOPA when it appears from 9 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, we'll be keeping our eyes on that, and you'll keep us up to date as that unfolds in Parliament there. Erin, thanks very much indeed for that update.